So I got a question for you. How many perfect songs are there in this world? How many perfect songs have there been in history where every second of it is exhilarating? That no matter how many times you listen to it, it doesn't lose its luster. Now, in my opinion, one such song was released in 1987. This song's origin is really interesting. It's just like a dream. If you can believe it, it's a happy song that was inspired by one of the world's most notorious suicide hotspots. I mean, only this band could get away with something like this. Their frontman was spending the night there, not to take his own life, but in a near-tragic twist of fate, he came dangerously close to dying. The whole incident was darkly surreal, but somehow it led to the perfect song that's so ambiguous that after listening to it, we're not sure what happened to the mysterious girl by the time the song ends. Did she die? Let's solve this mystery and bask in a flawless song for sure. Can you guess what it is? The answer's coming up next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. You know, if you used to look forward all year to October for the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown episode, that came on TV as a special, you're gonna dig this channel of deep musical nostalgia. Make sure to subscribe below right now, click the big red button, click the notification bell so you always know when our latest interviews come out. We have some amazing interviews coming out. I've been really privileged to get some good ones. And also check us out on Patreon and check out our merch. That helps us keep it a daily channel. So it's time for another edition of Number One in Our Hearts. Of course, this is the show that honors songs that were so undeniably great. They absolutely should have been number one on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. But, reasons like radio play, lack of marketing, label support, or just, stupidity kept the song from number one. Today's episode, we're showcasing one of the most influential bands of the rock era with a song that I would feel more than comfortable awarding the most exhilarating song of the rock era. Truly one of the dreamiest, one of the most uplifting, grab you by the throat, sing-along classics ever recorded. It's a perfect song, and it's actually one of the most popular songs from the 80s all these years later, especially with young people who keep discovering it on various platforms, and they're as blown away as we were back in the day. The band is The Cure, and the song is from their breakthrough 1987 double LP, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me. We're covering a song that has a title that aptly describes the song, Just Like Heaven. Just like heaven. Even though it's a happy little ditty about falling head over heels, it's also had a dark origin, and the woman of the narrator's affection might have died in this song. Did it happen in real life? Is it true? Let's find out. So I talked about this song in one of the very first videos we ever did on this channel, but it was kind of short and sweet. We never really covered the story behind it. So let's, start by giving you a 60-second starter on the band that formed in Crawley, England in 1976. The Cure, originally called the Easy Cure, was initially comprised of schoolmates Robert Smith on vocals and guitar, Michael Dempsey on bass, Lawrence Lowell Tallhurst on drums, and Pearl Thompson, now known as Pearl, on guitar. They began writing and demoing their own songs from the very get-go, and they invested their time and energy gigging around southern England. So in 1978, Easy was dropped from the name to just be The Cure, and they actually were a trio for a little bit. The British band released their first single on the Small Wonder label in 1978. It was pretty controversial soon after they signed with Fiction Records. I'm the stranger, killing an Arab. In May of 1979, the band issued their debut album, Three Imaginary Boys, and released the upbeat Cure classic, you all know it, Boys Don't Cry. That was the single. The first half of the 80s would see The Cure release albums at a breakneck pace and endure multiple lineup shakeups along the way. Early 1980, The Cure delved into the darker side of Robert's songwriting psyche with the minimalist LP 17 Seconds and their first UK Top 40 single, of Forest. Great song. Their third album, Faith, followed in 81, and the doom-laden Pornography in 1982, going number 14 and number 8 on the UK album charts, respectively. Singles like Primary, Charlotte Sometimes, and The Hanging Garden all emerged from the era, all hanging out in the 30s and 40s on the UK charts. Here in the US, though, The Cure was starting to show signs of life on the dance charts, but otherwise they kind of remained unknown to American mainstream listeners. But that would slowly change. Let's get into it. 1984 and 1985, they featured two more Cure albums, The Top and Head on the Door. The latter featured the Cure's first Billboard Hot 100 entry, In Between Days. Barely made the chart, it went to number 99. Phenomenal song. Now, getting in today's featured album, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, the Cure's roster, along with Smith and Tallhurst, now included Simon Gallup on bass, Boris Williams behind the drum kit, Roger O'Donnell on keys, and the familiar face of guitarist Thompson came back. Kiss Me was the Cure's seventh studio album. It was recorded at Studio Mirabeau in Correns, France. It was an immense 18-track double offering with a remarkable stylistic range to it. The total runtime came in at 74 minutes and 35 seconds, so it was epic. Released on May 26th of 1987, Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me ushered the Cure into the American mainstream and transformed the band into a household name from there. It was the Cure's first album to break into the top 40 on the Billboard 200 chart and the first to achieve platinum status here in the States. Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me was also a major European success, reaching the top 10 in countries like Germany, Switzerland, and the Netherlands, also Austria and the UK. Elsewhere, it went to number 30 in Canada, number 14 in New Zealand, and number 9 in Australia. 4 singles were released from the double LP, Why Can't I Be You, Catch, Hot, 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 and today's featured track, Just Like Heaven.
Sometimes try to catch you.
And the story behind this one is nuts. It's crazy. But let me start out by saying that Just Like Heaven is the equivalent of musical crack, right? Robert Smith created so many hooks in this song, so many enthralling melodies, it's virtually impossible for the human ear to reject it. It's so exhilarating, it's so lavish, it's lush, it's the personification of absolute musical perfection. Even the jocks at my school who called me every name in the book for my love of new wave music and college rock and so on, they always said, the Cure suck, but that Heaven song is really cool. I mean, it's just undeniable. It's impossible to dislike. It also has a dark side, and it's quite ambiguous. When some heard it, they wondered, what's this song really about? We're going to solve that. The beginnings of this phenomenal track go back to 1987 in a small 2-bedroom flat in North London where Robert Smith was living with his longtime girlfriend, Mary Poole. The two had actually met when Robert was 14. They'd have a lifelong love affair from there. One of those 2 rooms was Robert's music room, and in his words, the only discipline that he had in his life at that point was self-imposed. Smith set up a regimen of writing 15 days out of each month. Otherwise, he'd have spent his days watching TV until the pubs opened and then gone out drinking. Although Robert Smith didn't realize it until much later, Just Like Heaven's structure was actually very similar to a mid-70s indie pop tune by the Only Ones called Another Girl, Another Planet. He would talk about that later on. Robert had distinct memories of listening to it when he was younger.
I'm on another planet with you.
According to Robert Smith, the main difference between the two is that he introduced some different chord changes into Just Like Heaven to give it in his words, a slightly melancholic feeling, which is what a lot of the Cure's music has. When the Cure got to work on Just Like Heaven during the Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me sessions, Smith was so impressed with Boris Williams' drumming that he decided that each of the instruments needed to be showcased one by one to open the song. That's what makes it so great. So on the finished cut, Just Like Heaven begins with Williams' drums and Gallup's bass, and then comes Thompson's guitar strumming, and then Robert's 12-string, and then Tallhurst's keyboards. And back to Thompson's lead guitar. And then everything comes together for 4 bars, with Thompson's immaculate solo making the rounds. And then finally we hear Robert Smith's provocative opening line. Show me, show me, show me how you do that trick.
Show me, show me, show me how you do that trick.
The one that makes me scream, she said. I mean, one of the greatest opening lines of the 80s. And it's a song where you hear all those things and your mind picks up the different instruments and you're just enthralled. You cannot believe what you're hearing. I couldn't believe it the first time I heard it. I still can't believe it 1,000 listens later. And all these years later, I mean, it takes almost a full minute before you hear the vocals. That was back when we let the music breathe a little bit. And it worked. So I gotta ask, what is this trick? Show me how you do that trick. Why the screaming? What is the song even about? There's some different theories, but according to the Cure frontman, some of it has to do with Mary. That's what he said. Some of all the songs are to do with Mary. Robert Smith was head over heels in love when he wrote Just Like Heaven. And you can definitely feel that vibe. In fact, just a year later, the couple would get married and Smith would write her the Cure's iconic love song for a wedding gift, which was her biggest hit. Describing their connection, Smith would later say in 1996, and I quote, "Mary means so incomprehensibly much to me. I actually don't think she has ever realized how dependent I've been on her during all these years that we've been together. She's always been the one that has saved me when I have been the most self-destructive. She's always been the one that has caught me when I've been so very close to falling apart completely. And if she would have disappeared, I'm sorry, I know that I'm falling into my irritating, miserable image by saying it, then I would have killed myself." Those were his words exactly. So with his lover, his wife, his companion in mind, Mary, it makes perfect sense that Robert said, and I quote, "Just Like Heaven was about a seduction trick. The song is about hyperventilating, kissing, and fainting to the floor. The idea is that one night like that is worth 1,000 hours of drudgery." He would go on to say that there's more to Just Like Heaven than being an unabashed love song. I mean, after all, this is Robert Smith we're talking about. In true Cure fashion, Just Like Heaven also has a darker underpinning. One that was inspired by a life-altering night of magic and trickery spent at Beachy Head in 1980. Now, for those of you who might not know, Beachy Head is a chalk-white 500-foot cliffside in southeastern England, not very far from where Robert Smith grew up. It's incredibly picturesque, as you'll see here, but Beachy Head is also an infamous suicide destination. In fact, in 2010, it was ranked the third most common spot in the world for suicide, behind the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco and Japan's so-called Suicide Woods. Not exactly a distinction you want as a tourist attraction, but the point is that if you take the wrong step, it's kind of game over. Describing his life-altering night on Beachy Head, Robert Smith said he spent it with a group of friends on the cliff top. They'd all been drinking, and someone thought it would be a good idea to go for a drunken walk in the dark. And then suddenly a thick blanket of fog came rolling in, and Robert lost sight of his friends. He couldn't even see his hand in front of his face. Not knowing which way to go, Robert realized that he might fall down the cliff if he moved another foot, so he just sat down there until it was dawn, and there was enough light to find his way back to his friends. Hence the line in the song, "And found myself alone, alone, alone above a raging sea." Now, Robert claimed that he heard strange voices that night and that he nearly started believing in ghosts because of it. But whatever happened while he was lost in the fog, Robert Smith would say that the experience was just like a dream. Put that in the song, of course. In the interview where he told this story, Robert didn't explicitly say that Mary was on Beachy Head that night. However, the song implies that she was. Spinning on that dizzy edge, I kissed her face and kissed her head. He goes on to worship everything about her, saying strange as angels, dancing in the deepest oceans, twisting in the water, you're just like a dream. Just like a dream. But then at the end of the song, the narrator implies that he wakes up alone above the raging sea. We talked about that. But then we find out that she may have actually drowned. In the song, he says, "Alone above a raging sea that stole the only girl I loved and drowned her deep inside of me." So did she die? I mean, at least in the song? Maybe. Robert Smith leaves it very ambiguous. Girl I loved.
drowned here deep inside of me.
In 2003, a decade and a half after its release, Robert called Just Like Heaven the best pop song The Cure have ever done. It was one take, and it was perfect, his words. According to Smith, when he wrote it, he told his bandmates, "I'll never write something this good again. I remember saying to the others in the studio, that's it, we might as well pack it up." Thankfully, we didn't. Now, people who love pictures of you might argue with that.
Living so long with my pictures of you.
The music video for Just Like Heaven gives us a little bit more intuition. It was directed by Tim Pope, who took care of all the Cure's MTV needs back then. He has 30-something Cure video credits on IMDb. But the idea that Just Like Heaven was to recreate the scene that inspired the song. Now, Pope shows the band performing on what appears to be Beachy Head. However, in reality, most of it was actually a fake clifftop created in the studio. To help sell the reality of playing on location, though, Pope included some leftover footage from the Cure's Close to Me video, which was actually shot at Beachy Head. During Just Like Heaven's piano break, there's also a dream sequence in which Mary Poole herself appears in ghostly white robes. The two of them dance without a care on the edge of the cliff. Said Robert, and I quote, "Mary dances with me in the video because she was the girl, so it had to be her." So as for the ambiguous ending, we're not sure if it was all just a dream or just seems like one because it's too good to be true, because, he might be in heaven. But in real life, Robert didn't lose his girl. He married her the next year, as you know. The finished version was released on October 5th of 1987. Here in the States, it became the Cure's highest-ranking single to that point, going to exactly number 40 on the Billboard Hot 100. Also reached number 28 on the U.S. Hot Dance charts. You think about it, both of those numbers are crazy. It's a crime. Just Like Heaven should have been a number one hit on both of those charts. But I guess mainstream listeners, they weren't ready for that. They were kind of warming up to the Cure at this point. Now, internationally, Just Like Heaven sold at number 89 in Australia and went to number 82 in the Netherlands. Elsewhere, it went to number 31 in New Zealand, number 29 in the UK, number 25 in Spain, and number 15 in Ireland.
Soft and only you, lost and lonely.
I've always wondered why anyone would ever cover this song. Kind of a waste of time if you ask me, because you'll never get anywhere near the perfection that it was. But that's just me. Speaking of covers, Just Like Heaven has been reimagined by a long list of bands. 10,000 Maniacs, Goldfinger, Tiffany, Dashboard Confessional, Neon Trees, Linkin Park, Eddie Vedder did it, Kelly Clarkson, Third Eye Blind, The Verve Pipe, Jim Blossoms. The Ocean Blue did it, a pretty good version. Better Than Ezra, Blink-182, Vampire Weekend, Jack Johnson. And Robert's favorite cover is by Dinosaur Jr., which boasts a faster tempo and a heavier distorted interpretation. I'm not a huge fan of it, but I love the Cure's original. The commercial success of Kiss Me, Kiss Me, Kiss Me and its mainstream breakthrough, Just Like Heaven, paved the way for even further commercial success, of course. In 1989, The Cure released their magnum opus, Disintegration, which featured the aforementioned love song. It was actually held out of the number one spot by Janet Jackson, Miss You Much. Other haunting singles from that album included Lullaby, Pictures of You, and Fascination Street, another masterpiece.
The Spider-Man is always hungry. It's open time down on Fascination Street.
Then in 1992, The Cure released Wish, another commercial offering that featured the band's last mainstream hit, Friday I'm in Love. That went to number 18 in the Hot 100 and number one on the U.S. alternative rock chart. High and Letter to Elise also went number one and number two on the alternative charts.
I don't care about you, it's Friday, I'm in love.
From there, The Cure repeated back into self-imposed mainstream exile, still scoring a handful of U.S. alternative rock charts with singles like Purple Haze the 13th, Mint Car, and Wrong Number. Then they refused to issue any singles from their 2000 release Blood Flowers. Phenomenal album, by the way. Maybe Someday did get leaked as a promo single and it reached number 10 on the alternative charts, but any dalliance that the band had with mainstream radio had long since passed. From there, The Cure would drop two more albums, one in 2004 and another one in 2008.
Your head
Now we're still waiting on their T's next album, Songs of a Lost World. Really pumped for that one. So I showed this to my son about 7 years ago. He's shown it to all the friends he's had since then. And he told me that out of 8 or 9 friends since then, every single one of them, Just Like Heaven, is their favorite song of all time. It's not a surprise. That is why it's one of the biggest songs of the 80s, especially with young people. But let's go back for a second. It was their first top 40 hit. Now, the week that Just Like Heaven peaked at number 40, the top 5 songs on the Billboard charts were So Emotional by Whitney Houston at number 5, Got My Mind Set on You by George Harrison at 4, Faith by George Michael was at 3, Is This Love by Whitesnake was at number 2, and The Way You Make Me Feel by Michael Jackson was at number 1. A lot of big names, some pretty stiff competition.
I got my mind set on you. I got to have faith, baby. That I've been searching for is this love. The way you make me feel.
Let's get serious here for a second, though. There isn't any song that came out in 1987 that is better than Just Like Heaven. Let's be clear. I don't really care what was at number 1 the week that Just Like Heaven peaked at number 40. As far as I'm concerned, all these years later, it's number 1 with a bullet.
Just like heaven.
They proved that when they wanted to write a great pop song, they could, and they wrote really the finest pop song of the 80s. And they actually finally got enshrined in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame all these years later. And they showed us why they are one of the most beloved bands ever. When an excitable interviewer, who probably never listened to their music ever, bubbly bombarded them, and I put a lot of emphasis on bubbly bombarded them before the ceremony. Let's end on Robert Smith's reaction to this. You got to see this.
Inductees 2019. Are you as excited as I am?
By the sounds of it, no.
That's one of my favorite moments ever. I've shared it so many times. Thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about The Cure and Just Like Heaven. What are your memories of this song? What do you think? Is it the greatest, catchiest sing-along song of all time? We talked about Windy by the Association, and that one is definitely catchy, but Just Like Heaven is just such an exhilarating song. I think it's the perfect pop song, even though The Cure is a rock band. Anyway, let's have a great discussion below and talk about your perfect songs. If you like our content, we invite you to subscribe. We would love to have you. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friend.